Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. I actually wanted to talk some NBA for a little bit, and I wanted to talk some actual basketball. And over the last couple weeks, as we've been getting closer, it is looking like hopefully we're going to have the NBA playoffs here. And nothing official yet, but according to all reports, it's looking like that's going to be the case. And I talked a little bit last week about how if the NBA playoffs do indeed happen, why these playoffs would have the chance to be different than any other year. Mostly in the NBA, when we enter the playoffs, we kind of have a general idea of who the possible 2 or 3 teams are that could win the whole thing. You know, this year, around Christmas time, most people expected the Lakers, the Bucks, or the Clippers, and if any of those teams wouldn't have won, people would have been pretty surprised. But I'm going to say this, and I spoke about it once again on, last Monday show. Any team could win. Not any team, but if any year we would have a winner that not a lot of people would expect it to be, I think this year would be the year. I think if a favorite was going to get knocked off in the NBA Finals, or even before that, and a team could go on like a magical run, I think this year would be the year more than ever. And I actually picked out a couple teams that not named the Lakers, the Bucks, or the Clippers that I think could actually go on a really big run when the playoffs do come back, and I wanted to discuss them, so I picked 5 teams. Here we go. Team number 1, the Houston Rockets. Now, the Rockets are in 6th place in the Western Conference, and when you look at this team, they're hard because they did become a different team in the trade deadline, and we've had this conversation all the time about the Houston Rockets' small ball mentality and if it would be able to work or not, and they changed their style of play, not even their style of play, but they changed their personnel mid-season when they traded Clint Capella to the Hawks and added Robert Covington, and they fully committed to playing that super small lineup with PJ Tucker at center and Russell Westbrook at the point guard, Harden, all that. But with only a month between the deadline and the shutdown, it's kind of hard to figure out if this plan is going to work or not. I always use the argument that even though I'm not the biggest Daryl Morey fan typically, I do give him credit for at least trying something different, because I think we all agreed that the Houston Rockets, the way they've played in the playoffs over the last couple of years, even without Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul was their point guard at the time, that strategy wasn't working, really ever. And when you look at Houston, I think, and I'm not saying they're going to beat the Lakers or the Clippers if they play in the playoffs, I think that the only realistic way that they would have a shot at beating the Lakers or beating the Clippers or beating the Bucks would be for them to just get red hot from 3. That's their strength. And I think this small ball lineup gives them the ability to do that. Is it going to work? I'm not sure, but at least it gives them a shot. And during the past several seasons, James Harden, like we all know, he's put up historic numbers in the regular season while finishing among the league leaders in minutes played. And then he hits a wall in the playoffs. With 4 months off, by the time the season ended, but to the time the season resumes, he's going to be fresh and well rested. He's going to be more fresh than he's ever been at any time in the season. The Rockets' new style has a high ceiling, but also a low floor. And when you combine that with an extended break for James Harden, maybe the Rockets, maybe it could be their year. I'm not saying it's going to be, but I feel like if any year was ever going to be their year, this would be the one. So I think the one team that could shock the world coming with the NBA coming back would be the Houston Rockets. Team number 2, let's go to the Eastern Conference, and I'm going to give you guys the Miami Heat. And when you look at this Miami Heat team, they're another interesting team to break down, because people expected them to be good in the preseason before the season started, but I don't know if anyone necessarily expected them to be this good. And I'll tell you what I mean. We knew that going into the season, the Miami Heat got Jimmy Butler and that they were going to be much improved from last year. As you guys remember, last year they actually missed the playoffs, and it's weird. The Miami Heat are such a well-run franchise with Pat Riley running things. They rarely, and I mean rarely, miss the playoffs. But at the same time, when you look at the Miami Heat, they've gotten some really nice contributions from guys that going into the season, they didn't really expect it from. I think if you were to ask most Miami Heat fans at the beginning of the season, right, and you were to tell them that come playoff time you'd be like the 4 or 5 seed, they'd be like, okay, that's pretty good. We did it on the back of obviously Jimmy Butler, who's been good, and Bam Adebayo, who most Miami Heat fans did expect to break out. He's been good as well. But they're relying on 2 undrafted guys Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson. Those are their two starting guards in the backcourt. They also play a second unit with rookie Tyler Hero out of Kentucky, who's been really good. Goran Dragic, guys like that. And I think when you look at the Miami Heat and the way they've been playing over, throughout the whole season, I think they play very well together. They play good team basketball. They have a good coach. And I think that's the kind of thing that when you're playing in these kind of circumstances, that's a thing Miami could definitely take advantage of, using their chemistry to their advantage. And they have a star in Jimmy Butler who has plenty of playoff experience. Let's not also forget, right before the season shut down during the trade deadline, they brought in Jay Crowder and Andre Iguodala. I think both of those guys can make a big-time impact, and I think if a surprise team in the East can make a run, it could definitely be the Miami Heat. Let's head back to the Western Conference, and I want to talk about the Denver Nuggets. Now, I feel like a lot of people over the last couple NBA playoffs have kind of disrespected the Denver Nuggets a little bit, and I understand why, but what I also will say is this. The Denver Nuggets, for 2 regular seasons in a row, have become a really, really good team. And they became consistent. They've been good. Mike Malone's a really good coach. You could say what you want about Jokic, and I understand he looks like he's in much better shape now, but he's not really the guy that you're just going to say, okay, I want you to put the team on your back and win us this series. I think Jamal Murray could be that guy. But the Nuggets, I think, are kind of similar to the Miami Heat. I think they could be a year or two away from breaking out, but if any year they were going to make a run, it would be this year. Because keep in mind, I think chemistry and playing together is going to be so important this year. And when you have teams at the top like the Bucks and the Clippers and the Lakers, are those teams going to be good and very hard to beat? Absolutely. But I think teams like Denver could possibly beat them just because they've played that core group of guys, right? Murray, Millsap, Jokic, Gary Harris, Will Barton, those kind of players, right? They were all together last year throughout the regular season when the Nuggets made their deep playoff run. They lost a heartbreaking Game 7 to the Portland Trailblazers. When you also look at Denver, they have some guys off the bench that I think have some high ceilings, like Michael Porter Jr. I like Monte Morris as a player a lot. Torrey Craig's a very good defender. So the Nuggets have some bodies on the team. They have the depth, they have the coaching, and I think they could definitely make a run. I think it would be very interesting to see them face off against a team like Houston in the first round of the playoffs right now. We obviously, still have to finish the regular season, but right now, if the playoffs would start, those teams, Denver and Houston, would play each other in the first round of the NBA playoffs. So Denver, I like Jamal Murray. I like Jokic. Am I saying that ideally in most years would they be able to beat LeBron and the Lakers? I'm not really sure about that, but I think this year, if they were to do it, this year would be the year. The Nuggets are the third team I'm labeling that could shock some people when the NBA playoffs do come back. Number 4, let's go back to the Eastern Conference. I'm going to ask you guys this. If you were to pick one team in the Eastern Conference to make the NBA Finals, not name the Milwaukee Bucks, who would it be? And I understand most people would pick the Toronto Raptors. They were the defending NBA champions last year. They're the number 2 seed in the East right now, and they had a great regular season even without Kawhi Leonard. I think a lot of other people would also consider the Philadelphia 76ers. When you look at the talent they have on that team with Embiid and Ben Simmons and Josh Richardson and Tobias Harris and the amount of size they have on that team. Philadelphia is a team that most people would pick. I already spoke about Miami. I think they're a contender. But for me, the answer would be the Boston Celtics. And I want to talk about the Celtics. I think out of any team in the East not named the Bucks, the Celtics have the highest ceiling. And a big reason for that is because they have 2 players leading their team that have very high ceilings. I think Jason Tatum is a top 10 player in the NBA. Or at least he played like it this season. He was a monster. And he is a future MVP. I'm confident in saying that. I've been saying this since his rookie year that I felt confident about him being the Celtics' big-time top-notch scorer. You remember his rookie season, he went toe-to-toe with LeBron in a playoff series. Very hard to do. Also, Kyrie Irving's no longer there. You get Kemba Walker now. Kemba was much better than I expected for the Celtics this past season, and I do think if you were a Celtic fan, you couldn't have asked any more of him. You also had the chemistry aspect with guys like Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Daniel Tice, guys that have been playing together for a long time. Gordon Hayward is there as well. Maybe you could get something out of him. And I think when you look at the Celtics, I like the way they're built. I think they're built around two really good players. Jaylen Brown has been very good this season as well. They have a good coach in Brad Stevens. I think it's pretty obvious for me. If one team out of the East was not named the Bucks, could make the NBA Finals, it would be the Celtics. They're my fourth team that I think could surprise some people in Orlando. And finally, the last team I wanted to talk about, let's head back to the Western Conference. It's funny, because going into the regular season, I was not very high on this team. I thought they traded away Paul George, and I was like, what are we doing here? I understand they got a bunch of draft picks back, but I was like, okay, the Thunder, their future could be pretty stale. Chris Paul is pretty old. I don't know how good of an NBA coach Billy Donovan is. What's the deal with this team? They couldn't win with Russell Westbrook. They couldn't win with Paul George. And I mean, by win, I mean playoff series. What makes me think that they're going to be able to do that with guys like Danilo Gallinari and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander leading the way? Well, I'll tell you what. I think Oklahoma City is another team that could cause some serious damage in the NBA playoffs. And once again, a lot of it has to do with chemistry. Chris Paul was awesome this past year. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander playing with Chris Paul, I didn't necessarily know if that could have been a combination that could have worked. Just because when you look at it, I love Shai Gilgeous as a player. I think he's been a beast really ever since he got into the league coming out of Kentucky. But at the same time, I don't necessarily know if I expected him to be this good this quickly. I like Gallinari. Hopefully they'll have Andre Roberson back. I think if they do get him back, that would be the kind of player that really changes things. He is one of the better defenders in the whole NBA. You have a guy in Chris Paul that has plenty of experience. And once again, as good as the Lakers are and as hard as they are to beat, as good as LeBron is, and as good as Kawhi Leonard is, if any year those kind of teams would go down, it is this year. You have to realize these games are literally being played in high school gyms in Orlando, and it's literally going to be the world's greatest AAU basketball tournament. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it right now. And when I look at the Thunder and teams like the Rockets and the Nuggets and Miami and Boston, these are the kind of teams that have the chemistry, I think, that could really do some damage and knock off a top-notch team. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all goes down, but I'm really excited for the NBA playoffs, man, and as the time gets closer, I'm going to have some guys on here getting ready to break down every single game, every single matchup. I'm really going to be looking forward to it, and it's going to be a great time. So that's going to do it for this segment. I really can't wait for the NBA to come back, man. I really hope it does. I know we've had a little bit of health concerns over the last couple days. I know Kyrie Irving's been in the news a little bit over the last couple days. But yeah, I'm just hoping the NBA could come back as soon as possible. I hope this bubble plan could work. There are some concerns, I think, with the hotline and players not really being allowed to do anything in the bubble. I don't know how effectively and efficiently that plan is going to work. But at the same time, I just want to talk basketball, man. I want to watch basketball. I want to watch some actual games. And with that being said, I think we're going to get that sooner rather than later.